Keith Ellison is the deputy chair of the Democratic National Committee, who just recently won the Democratic nomination for State Attorney General. His winning of this nomination came just days after he was accused by an ex-girlfriend and her children of physical and mental abuse. Much like with Roy Moore all those months ago, people were skeptical of the timing of these allegations and gave him the benefit of the doubt. Usually, when people come to the defense of people caught up in something like this, one of the first things that is said is, "Show me the 911 report." Well, there you are. This is not from the woman or her children, but rather another woman, whom he was having an affair with when he was married. The woman's name is Amy Alexander, and she was an activist that became romantically involved with Ellison back in 1993. Here, she describes her relationship with him in her own words. A link to the full article she wrote is in the description. I officially met Keith Ellison at a tenant organizing conference in the fall of 1993. I was 20 years old, Keith was married. He began calling me almost daily. He took me to lunch. In May, Keith wanted to try and quiet me, so he came to my house uninvited. We had words, his anger kicked in, he berated me, he grabbed me and pushed me out of the way. I was terrified. I called the police. As he fled, he broke my screen door. I have never been so scared. I immediately began to second-guess myself, as many victims of abuse do when they are at the brink of exposing their abuser. How could I, or anyone else, stand up to the man who had been the local icon of black militancy for almost 2 decades? I took the bus to the government center only to find out that Keith had filed a continuance against me. Keith's attorney met me there and offered me a ride home. He tried to convince me to be more cooperative. I refused to let anyone try and ban me from the public space. That's what Keith was trying to do, to prohibit me from the Urban League and the state office building. The restraining order was granted in June. I guess a single mom on a bicycle is scary stuff for a lawyer who defends cop-killer gangsters. I obeyed the restraining order without exception. It was Keith's friend and attorney who called me the day after the 2006 DFL endorsement convention to arrange a meeting. We met at the Modern Cafe. He offered me a release from Keith's restraining order if I either promised to shut up about our affairs or come out publicly in support of Keith's candidacy for Congress. I refused. I asked them repeatedly to leave me alone. He called me again in July with the same offer. I reported that incident to police, and the cops agreed to let the attorney know to leave me alone. It was the harassment from Ellison's attorney that caused my fear to reignite. Ellison is a man on a quest for power and national prominence, a man with deep ties to some pretty scary people. I feared for my life and for the safety of my daughter. I heard through the grapevine that Ellison's people had preemptively distributed information to the press suggesting that I was insane. He even remarked to some that he didn't even know me. That awful feeling was back. All of that was from the second woman to come out, Amy Alexander. So what about this woman I mentioned earlier and her children? This is from a Facebook post that was made public just days before the Democratic nomination for State Attorney General, which, I will remind you, he won. My name is Austin Monahan, and I am writing this letter on behalf of me and my brother. My brother and I watched our mom come out of pure hell after getting out of her relationship with Keith Ellison. For several months, we knew something wasn't right and couldn't figure it out. When we asked our mom if everything was okay, she told us that she was dealing with stress and it would be okay. In the middle of 2017, I was using my mom's computer trying to download something and I clicked on a file. I found over 100 text and Twitter messages and video almost 2 minutes long that showed Keith Ellison dragging my mom off the bed by her feet, screaming and calling her an effing bitch, and telling her to get the fuck out of his house. The messages I found were mixed with him consistently telling my mom he wanted her back, he missed her, he knew he fucked up, and he wished he could do things differently. He would victim shame, bully, and threaten her if she went public. I texted him and I told him I knew what you did to my mom and a few other things. I met up with my mom that night and asked her what happened. She said nothing happened until I told her I saw a video and a hell of a lot of messages saying something different. She finally talked. My brother and I were so angry and hurt for our mom. We were ready to go public, but our mom begged us not to, and she, along with others, convinced us it wasn't in our mom's best interest. I didn't read the full Amy Alexander article or the full Facebook post by Austin Monahan, but links to both of them are in the description if you would like to read them for yourselves. Karen Monahan has claimed that what her son has said has been true. Besides the post, the mother has posted text with Ellison on Twitter which seem legitimate. There are also pictures that exist of her with Ellison, and Ellison has confirmed that they were in fact in a relationship. He has denied any wrongdoing, claiming to tackle the accusations head on, whatever that means. Before, we just had a woman under her name as well as her children speaking out. Now, we have a second person who wrote an article all those years ago, documentary proof. A person's word is one thing, but having the 911 report handy is another. With Amy Alexander, we were able to verify that it was indeed Keith Ellison that she called the police on. Keith Ellison is 55 years old. The age of the Keith Ellison noted in the police report from 2005 says the accused was a 41-year-old black male, and Keith Ellison was 41 years old in 2005. If that is not enough, the address in the report lines up with the one of the public addresses associated with Amy Alexander, meaning that this report is very likely completely legitimate. Now that Keith Ellison has won the nomination for State Attorney General, the Democrats have to stick with him, meaning we will likely see some of their ultra-ethical behavior in order for them to shill for him for the next few months. The situation is a lot like what happened to Roy Moore, except, of course, the forged evidence used against Roy Moore. The media spent weeks of the entire news cycle dedicated to covering each and every word of any woman that spoke out against Roy Moore, and yet, I know you'll find this very surprising, they don't seem to be covering this story with the same fervor. Remember, the stories about how he was banned from the mall, that was a lie. This was a lie, or rather a reported fact they could not prove. I'm not a fan of Roy Moore, he's a Zionist after all, but what they did to him was clearly unjust. With Ellison, we now have the actual 911 report of a woman scared for her life because Ellison had intimidated her and had used the law to silence other women as well. I hesitated to talk about this Ellison stuff before the 911 report came out, giving somebody like him, even somebody like him, the benefit of the doubt. However, seeing the reports and the article by Amy Alexander, I can't remain quiet any longer. I believe there is enough here to call out Representative Keith Ellison on his apparent treatment towards women and definitely towards his own family, as he was apparently using his position of influence to seduce aspiring young activists. There seems to be a pattern emerging. Bill Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, John Conyers, Joe Biden, Al Franken, Matt Lauer, and the list goes on and on. There seems to be an issue that the Democratic Party has specifically with allowing wolves in sheep's clothing to position themselves into areas where they can impose their power on others. Well, that will be it for this topic, but what do you guys think? Should this guy be given the benefit of the doubt? Well, we do have a 911 report, but we don't have a police report. At what point should we believe the people when they speak out? For me, having multiple people speak out, their stories line up, as well as the absence of Gloria Allred or Lisa Bloom, give the story enough weight to stand on its own. I believe them, although the timing does seem suspect. The two stories, one from Amy Alexander and one from Austin Monahan, paint pictures of Ellison that complement one another, showing a man who uses his position of political presence to cheat on his wife. Ellison did what Weinstein did, albeit on a smaller scale. On top of that, he seems to have a volatile anger. Certainly, he should not be in a position of political power, if nothing else, than because of his endorsement of this lovely organization. Now, the way things are looking, I could see Keith Ellison going and getting a job at the Young Turks, or even MSNBC, or CNN, or ABC, knowing his history. This is something they like. This is something they approve of. We have seen that time and time again. It's all a matter of who does it. And because this man has a complexion they agree with, has a complexion that gives his voice more weight in their political circles, I think he's ripe for the picking. I think he would be great on CNN, just telling us all how wrong we are and how much we should respect women. Really, Keith Ellison is a man of the future. He knows Helter Skelter's coming, and boy, does he want to assert his moral virtue so that everybody knows, don't worry, he's on the good guy's side. Don't worry about what he does to women. Don't worry about what he puts a family through. That doesn't matter. He's a tolerant one. He's on our side. He's their guy. But anyway, I'm rambling on far too much. But let me know what you guys think about this story in the description. And here it is, your moment of clarity. And by the way, big shout out to Dame Pesos for making this video clip. I've never seen it before. It's great.
Endangered Wolf says, if you think about it, unemployment for African Americans was at its lowest during slavery.
Yikes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.